The World Baseball Classic starts tonight, and this might be the coolest thing in sports that nobody cares about. Baseball is probably the second most popular international sport that was actually started in the US, fighting with basketball for that top spot. I think basketball is probably a little bit more popular at this point, but baseball has a ton of international players in the MLB from countries across the world. Of course, it's pretty heavily centered in the Americas and Japan, Korea, but there are 20 countries that are going to be competing in the World Baseball Classic, and 19 of them have players that are currently in the MLB. The only country that doesn't is Czechia, which is kind of interesting to me why they're in the tournament at all. But they are in the tournament with all of the 19 other countries that have MLB players. And I think that the World Baseball Classic, although it's the only international competition at this point, really only major international competition, maybe outside of like the Little League World Series, for baseball on the international stage, it's a very, very cool format. And I don't know if they've been doing it like this for a long time, but the way they have it set up with pool play this time is really awesome. Pool play is going to take place in 4 different locations. It's going to be Houston, Miami, San Juan, Puerto Rico in the US, and then it's going to be in Tokyo for the final pool play location. And I don't know that it's the only competition that could do it that way, but I think it's the only competition that does do it that way, where they kind of get this globe-trotting feel to their one competition. I think that is really cool. Maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to show it because you're going to have games in Tokyo that are 15 hours behind the games you're going to be playing on the US and Puerto Rico side of things. But I still think that it adds a lot to the competition, especially because baseball is this sport that has so many different international players, and you really want to have a chance for those players to be able to play games in their hometowns. I mean, a lot of MLB games are being played in Japan anyway, but being a fan in Japan that might get to go see a World Baseball Classic game where you get to go see Ohtani, where you get to go see Yamamoto or any of your other favorite Japanese players, it's going to be that are currently playing in the MLB, because there's also a lot of Japanese league players that'll be in this as well. That is got to be a cool thing, and the World Baseball Classic is allowing that to happen. I think the other really cool thing about this is more so than any basketball competition, probably on the level with like the World Cup or the kind of continental competitions within soccer, is you get to see a lot of different players either playing with each other. They've been in the same league, but they haven't been on the same team, so they get to play with each other, being on their international team, or you get like teammates that are playing against each other because they're on different international teams. And I think that is a really cool part of the competition. I mean, the Trout, Ohtani at bat to end the 2023 World Baseball Classic is probably the most iconic moment from any of these WBCs, this being the 6th one that they'll have run. So I do think, because there's so many international players in the MLB and there's so many players in the MLB, that adds a lot of that kind of intrigue into this that you don't get in other international competitions in other sports. But I think that's where the coolness ends, because this really feels like a forced competition from like MLB corporate to say we need to find a way to reach out to a world stage, and not something that's necessarily organic from like the fans wanting it or the players wanting it or whatever it may be. It feels like a corporate tournament that was created specifically for TV viewership. And a big reason I say that is because I didn't even realize the WBC was coming up until I heard David Samson talking about the insurance issues that the MLB and the WBC are currently having, specifically in regards to the Puerto Rican team. And I didn't really understand what he meant by insurance until he explained it a little bit more. Basically, like I said, the WBC was created by the MLB in the wake of them baseball getting kicked out of the Olympics. And they basically were like, we're going to shrink at the world stage if we don't try to make some kind of international competition that can bring eyes to the game outside of the MLB season. So they create the World Baseball Classic, but the owners didn't want to put their best players out on the field and have them get hurt before the MLB season and lose a bunch of money during the regular season. So they came up with essentially this scam of insurance, athletic insurance, which still doesn't really make any sense to me, that was backed by some insurance company that would pay out like the salary or a portion of the salary of a player that got hurt in the WBC. Well, lo and behold, they didn't want to end up doing that anymore. It wasn't worth it to that insurance company. The MLB started doing it. The MLB couldn't really afford to continue to do it. So now they're in this kind of limbo of where, especially injury-ridden players, are not being insured for the WBC. And so their teams are saying, all right, then you can't play, because we're not going to risk you going and getting hurt to go play for Venezuela for 4 games and you not be able to be available to us when the regular season comes around and when we're trying to make a run for the World Series or, just get butts in the seats, which is really what the owners are worried about. So that is the only reason that I heard about this coming up is because of the problems that they're having to even get players to go out and play this. And to add to that, they're having this basically right before the MLB season. The final of the WBC will be on March 17th. And then the next Wednesday, March 25th, is the opening night game between the Giants and the Yankees, which again, why are you having your opening night on a Wednesday night in the middle of March? That is baseball questions that I don't have the answer to. But having this potentially like 6 or 7 game schedule for your star players right before you get into the regular season doesn't necessarily make sense to me. It's not spring training. It's not preseason. These are games that they should be going out there trying to win if you really want this competition to work. And you're asking them to do that before they go out and play 162 games of the regular season and potentially 20 more in the postseason if you want to go win a World Series. So you're asking these players to put on like almost 200 games in a season that they're playing the WBC. Some of these players, the best of these players that had just played up through October, even into November, I think, for the World Series, and have a small break to get back after playing basically 200 games the season before. And that's the rub with so many of these leagues and so many different sports, that they want to find ways to squeeze out more and more revenue out of the game that they are invested in, but they don't want to lose any revenue from the things that they already have in place. Baseball is a major example of that. 162 game schedule just does not make that much sense in the modern day unless you're just mainly looking at gate. And with the problems that baseball is currently having with local or regional sport networks going under and them losing a lot of their TV revenue from those things, it kind of exacerbates that problem even more, that they need to keep that 162 game schedule, but they're still trying to add in these additional competitions, add in these additional games in the postseason to get more and more money. I mean, NBA is having this problem currently as well. They're trying to kind of have their cake and eat it too with this NBA in-season tournament that is not really taking games away. It's adding a couple games actually, when everybody really sees the major problem with the NBA is you don't need to be playing this many games. You just need more high value games. And that's the thing with baseball. That's the thing with college football. That's the thing with even the international leagues in soccer. I mean, you're going to start to run into that problem with the NFL as well, is that they're not quite understanding that you're diminishing the product by just adding more things in and not increasing kind of the value of those games for us as consumers to watch them. And the WBC is a real stark example of that, because what does a WBC trophy mean to a country? What do those games actually mean when you have all of these limits put in place and all of these things put in place to not make it the best competition possible? Because to go along with the insurance fiasco, and I'm sure a part of this insurance fiasco is a pitching limit for the 3 different rounds. There's 65 pitches maximum in the first round, 80 in the quarterfinals, and 95 in the championship round. Now, I don't know any pitchers that are going to go out and throw 95 pitches. Maybe Yamamoto's going to go out and throw 95 pitches in the championship round because his arm is made out of steel, but that is like Little League World Series stuff, to be having pitch limits put in. And it makes sense because, again, the people that are really bankrolling this are the MLB owners and the money people in the MLB. So they don't want to lose their best players, especially pitching from an injury or over pitching in the World Baseball Classic. But then why are we doing this? Why are you having this competition that brings all of the best players together if we're not going to really be able to see them play? It doesn't feel so much like it's a World Cup or a Olympics or whatever they're trying to make it be. It feels more like kind of an elevated all-star game prior to the season. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not like the biggest baseball fan. I'm really, outside of my main teams, it's really just Doug's football and my fantasy football team. I'll watch something if it's easy to watch and if you give me a reason to care. So I was watching the World Series. I was paying attention pretty closely to the MLB playoffs because that's an incredible setup. You really get to see baseball strategy. You really get to see each pitch actually matter, each at-bat matter. One mistake could be the difference between you making it to the next round or you going home. And that's what I really like. Maybe you can get that out of the World Baseball Classic, but I don't think that you're really giving people a reason to care about it. I don't know, especially US fans. I don't know, unless you're like the super hardcore baseball fan, that you are finding a reason or finding a way, hell or high water, to tune into the World Baseball Classic. Maybe that's different for Japan. They seem to take it a little bit more seriously. They're 3-time champions at this point. Maybe it's different for like the Dominican Republic or some of these Caribbean nations where baseball is the number one thing. But for US fans, I don't see a reason that you're tuning in. And I don't really know that Italy or Australia or Czechia or Great Britain is tuning in to the World Baseball Classic in droves. Again, those things feel forced to me more so than like Czechia demanding that they are a part of the World Baseball Classic. You know what I mean? Like, those things feel like trying to bring those fans in more so than having those fans actually want to be a part of it. Maybe Czechia is different. They have no MLB players on their roster. Maybe I'm underestimating the baseball fandom they have, and maybe they're super excited to be a part of the premier baseball competition. Maybe that's really what it is. Maybe it's just different over there. But it doesn't feel like this thing that is being demanded for so much as it's not even being shoved down our throats. It's just there. Like, you're not even really marketing it that well because people are only figuring out about it by baseball, like tight-knit baseball fans complaining about the problems of the World Baseball Classic. So I think it's cool. I love tournaments. I haven't said it before, but I will say it now and I'll say it again. I think tournaments are one of the best parts of any sport. You get to see these different kind of things come together. I think international competitions are really cool as well, but they need to make sense and you need to make sure that they matter. And just putting them there doesn't make them matter. Having the best players actually want to be a part of it and giving them a reason to play their hardest, that's what makes it matter. That's why we don't like all-star games anymore, because there's no reason for players to go out there and play their hardest. And that's why we don't like the MLB and NBA regular season, because it doesn't make sense for the strategy of the season to go out there and play your hardest. And built into the rules of the World Baseball Classic are ways to stop the managers from making their players play the hardest and go out there and try to win every single game. And for me, that just takes away all the cool factor to put it in this thing that's just like, all right, I guess we have the World Baseball Classic in 3 or 4 years whenever they decide to do it, and we'll watch it, or we'll just hear about the winner. But I do love me a bracket challenge, and they do have a bracket challenge for the WBC. So I went ahead, and even though I don't really have any clue about who's going to win, I went ahead and put a little bracket together. So you pick your winners of each of these pools, and you pick how they're going to do in the tournament portion of it. So I picked Canada and Cuba to get through in Pool A. Pool B, I picked the US and Great Britain to get through. Pool C, I picked Japan and Korea. And Pool D, I picked Dominican Republic and Venezuela to get through. And then we got Cuba and US facing off in the quarterfinal. Of course, I'm going to pick the US there. I think Cuba doesn't have the same level of MLB players they had like Yasiel Puig era, when there was a bunch of Cubans like risking their lives to get off the island to get into the MLB. It's not quite that level anymore, so we're going to pick the US. Dominican Republic, obviously, Vlad Guerrero, they got one of the best rosters in the entire competition, so they're going to go ahead and go through. Canada and Great Britain is an interesting matchup, but I'm going to pick Canada to go through. They have more MLB players, and that's really what I was basing it off of. I know that Jazz Chisholm is on Great Britain, right? But I'm still going to go with Canada. Japan, of course, is going to get through. That's a massive matchup. That's a big one. Japan and Venezuela, if that's how it ends up turning out. Venezuela could very well win Pool D, but either way, you're probably going to get Japan against either Dominican Republic or Venezuela in the quarterfinal, which is a big game for the WBC. We'll see if they get some good ratings on that. That puts Japan and Canada, U.S. and Dominican Republic. I, of course, picked Japan and the U.S. to get into the final. Japan has won 3 of them. The U.S. hasn't won since 2017. But Aaron Judge is going to turn that around this year. The captain of the U.S. team is going to lead them to victory over Shohei, over Yamamoto, over basically the entire Dodgers team, and the U.S. is going to get the win. They'll win this year's World Baseball Classic. So although I do like the format of this, and I do really like the idea of playing this kind of as a globe-trotting series, and I do like the bracket challenge, all of those things kind of get doled out for me because I don't think that this is something that people are kicking down the doors to see or kicking down the doors to go out and actually play. I do think that they're could be some tweaks to it, but I don't know that the MLB owners want to do the things to make the World Baseball Classic the best thing, especially if those things threaten the MLB season, which this already kind of has a somewhat threat to the MLB season with the looming threat of injuries to your best players a week before the season starts. So I don't think that the World Baseball Classic is ever going to get that much improved. And I think it's always just going to be kind of this thing that we are shocked that it's coming around in the next 2 days. And we're maybe watch it if a game's on or something like that. Outside of like hardcore baseball fans in the US and maybe some of these other countries, maybe Japan, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, really, really care about it because their teams are good and that's kind of their best sport. Other than that, I don't think that it's ever going to be the competition that they want it to be on par with the continental competitions in soccer, the World Cup in basketball even, and especially the World Cup and the Olympics for soccer and, of course, all of the Olympics. So it'll be interesting to watch if you do catch some of the games, but I don't know that this is the coolest thing that baseball could actually put out in an international format. But thanks for watching. Make sure that you like the video and subscribe to more Bucky Barracks for more.